Imagine this. You're in a shopping mall. Your child just steps a few feet away, and in minutes they're gone forever. It happened in 1981. 6-year-old Adam Walsh vanished in broad daylight while hundreds of people shopped around him. And when the truth of what happened came to light, America was never the same again. Because Adam's death didn't just shatter a family, it changed the way we protect children forever. But here's the part that will chill you. The very reforms his tragedy inspired only exist because he never came home. Before we continue, I want you to ask yourself something. If your child, your niece, your little brother went missing, how many systems are in place right now to make sure they're found? The answer may terrify you. And if you believe these stories must stay alive so no other parent goes through the nightmare the Walsh family did, hit subscribe right now. If you won't, then at least tell us why in the comments, because silence is exactly what predators count on. Hollywood, Florida, July 27th, 1981. It was a normal afternoon. Adam's mother, Reeve Walsh, took him to Sears at the Hollywood Mall. Adam was just 6 years old, small for his age, but full of curiosity and energy. While she shopped, Adam lingered near the toy aisle, fascinated by a video game display that had drawn other kids his age. It was only a few steps away, just a few harmless minutes of independence. Every parent has been there. You let your child explore, thinking you're still within sight, within reach. But in Adam's case, those minutes stretched into hours, and those hours became the most haunting days of his family's life. Reeve returned to the aisle. Adam wasn't there. She searched, called his name, asked other kids. Panic didn't hit instantly because what mother expects her child to simply vanish in a crowded store. But as the seconds ticked and no little boy appeared, her heart began to race. She went to store employees. Security. No announcements were made. No one locked the doors. No system existed for what to do when a child disappeared in a public space. The idea that a child could vanish that quickly was unthinkable. And yet Adam was gone. It would be 2 weeks before his parents got the phone call that would break them forever. But before we go there, let's step back and see how Adam's disappearance didn't just devastate one family. It exposed how unprepared America was to protect its children. In 1981, missing children weren't even tracked by national databases. There were no Amber Alerts, no centralized way for police departments to communicate across state lines. When a child vanished, it was often treated as just a runaway. Adam's case revealed the brutal truth. America had no system to immediately respond when children were abducted. The Walsh tragedy forced lawmakers to admit this gap was costing lives. Adam's death directly led to the creation of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC. For the first time, parents had a hotline, law enforcement had a network, and missing children had advocates who refused to let their names fade. This case also birthed Code Adam, the store-wide alert system used in malls and major retailers across the U.S., where employees lock down doors and search immediately when a child goes missing. Adam's name became the code word that saves lives. The ripple effect went even further. Television shows like America's Most Wanted, hosted by Adam's father John Walsh, turned crime solving into a national effort, capturing thousands of fugitives. Laws like the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act reshaped how America tracks and monitors sexual offenders. Adam's face may never have returned home, but his story redefined how America fights to protect every child after him. And this is where I need you to stop and think. If Adam's tragedy hadn't sparked change, how many more children would have slipped through the cracks forgotten? And if you don't believe this fight still matters, look at today's headlines. Children still vanish. Families still beg for answers. If you believe no story should be buried, subscribe right now, because forgetting is what makes predators strongest. But for Reeve and John Walsh, reforms meant nothing in those first hours. Picture it, a mother pacing the aisles of a mall, begging strangers for help, begging employees to act, and no one has a plan. Minutes turn into hours, hours into panic, panic into despair, and somewhere in those lost moments, Adam Walsh was taken forever. The terror wasn't just in what happened, it was in how quickly it happened, in how helpless everyone was to stop it, and when the truth of what Adam endured finally reached his parents. It was more than a family could bear. But to truly understand the pain, the fear, the helplessness, let's step into Adam's shoes. His story doesn't belong to headlines. It belongs to him. And before we do, I'll leave you with this thought. If Adam's voice could come back for just one moment, wouldn't you want to hear it? Then don't let it go silent. Subscribe now or tell us in the comments why you won't. Because stories like his, they demand to be heard. I remember that summer afternoon in 1981 as if it were tattooed on my mind, replaying every single day like a movie I can't turn off. My name doesn't matter here. What matters is the memory. Because I was there, I was in the store, walking past aisles of toys and laughter, when the sound of an innocent child's giggle cut through the air. That was Adam, his face, so full of light, so alive, so unaware of the darkness watching him. When you hear the word tragedy, you think of something far away, something that happens to strangers on the news. But when you see it unfold before your eyes, when the world goes silent around you realize tragedy doesn't just visit others, it stalks everyone. I watched Adam's small hand reach toward a display of toys. His mother, Reve, had only turned away for a moment, just one moment, and the cruel machinery of fate had already begun moving. The store wasn't noisy, but the silence that followed, it was suffocating. You could feel something unnatural in the air, like the way animals sense a predator before it strikes. And then he was gone. I didn't see the exact instant he vanished. One blink, one stolen breath, and the aisle that once held Adam's tiny frame was empty. Just a toy still spinning from where his hand had brushed it. That's when panic erupted. People shouted his name. The store filled with chaos. Adam! Adam! The sound carried across shelves, through hallways, across the parking lot. But let me tell you this. Panic doesn't begin with screams. Panic begins in the heart, a deep, crushing, unrelenting fear that convinces you the world is falling apart piece by piece. And as the search widened outside the store into the hot Florida air, that fear grew into something monstrous. I remember Reve's voice breaking as she shouted his name. Mothers know, fathers too. They know when silence isn't just silence. They know when something has gone terribly, irrevocably wrong. I remember turning to the officers when they arrived. Their faces betrayed what they wouldn't say aloud. Time was already against us. In cases like this, minutes matter. Each passing second was a door closing, a chance slipping into the abyss. Now here's where I want you, listening right now, to stop and ask yourself something. If you were in that store, if you saw that child vanish, would you speak up? Would you stop being polite, afraid of being wrong, and run forward, risking embarrassment to say, something isn't right here? Or would you, like so many do, wait for someone else to act? If you're the kind of person who wouldn't speak up, comment below and tell me why. I need to know, because silence is deadly. Silence killed Adam. The hours turned into days, and the hope of finding Adam alive dimmed. But when the news came, no one was prepared for the horror. Adam's small body was found 2 weeks later, but not whole, only a part of him. I won't give you the gruesome details because they will never leave me, and if I tell you, they'll never leave you either. But know this, evil had touched him, evil had consumed him, and evil left its mark on every parent in America. When I learned the truth, I broke. I cried in a way I didn't know humans could cry. It wasn't just grief, it was rage, despair, guilt. Because even though I wasn't his parent, I felt responsible. All of us who were there that day felt responsible. We were witnesses, and still, he slipped through our fingers. And if you, right now, think this could never happen to your child, I beg you to think again. Monsters don't hide under the bed. They shop where you shop. They smile where you smile. They walk where you walk. That realization changed me forever, because the tragedy of Adam Walsh wasn't just the loss of one child, it was the loss of every parent's peace of mind. It was the day America realized innocence could be stolen in broad daylight in a place we thought was safe. And the worst part? The system back then wasn't even prepared to help. But we'll get to that soon. For now, I need you to sit with this thought. What if Adam had been your child? What if that laughter you heard in the store was the last time you'd ever hear it again? Don't click away. Don't skip this moment, because what comes next will stay with you forever. After Adam's body was found, the Walsh family was never the same again. John Walsh, his father, would later become a name America knew everywhere, but in those first nights, he was just a broken man. I remember seeing him collapse on the steps outside his home, fists pounding the pavement, his cries so raw that even neighbors turned away. There are some sounds grief makes that the human ear is not meant to hear. You see, when a child dies like this, it isn't just one life stolen, it's an entire future erased. The family dinners that never happen, the birthdays that never come, the empty seat at Thanksgiving. And for John and Reve, it was worse because their tragedy became public. The world watched their pain, dissected it, judged it, and demanded they move forward while their hearts still bled. But something inside John didn't let him stop there. He turned his grief into fury, his pain into purpose. He realized that what happened to Adam wasn't just about one predator. It was about a system that failed at every single level. Police departments had no national network to track missing children, no central database, no rapid response protocols. Children vanished every day, and families were left to post flyers on telephone poles, hoping for miracles. That reality haunted John Walsh. And maybe it's haunting you right now, because it should. Imagine in your darkest hour, calling the police and realizing they had no playbook for saving your child. They would just do their best. Would you accept that? Could you? If you're watching this and you feel even an ounce of anger rising in your chest, subscribe right now, because stories like Adam's deserve more than to be forgotten. If you don't, if you just keep scrolling, then ask yourself why. Why would you turn away from the very stories that could save another life? John didn't turn away, he fought back. And his fight led to something that reshaped America, the missing children's movement. From Adam's death came reforms that touched every household in the nation. By 1984, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was born. A hotline was created. Suddenly, parents weren't alone anymore. They had numbers to call. They had faces on posters, on milk cartons, on television. And still, it wasn't enough. I remember the early years when those milk carton faces first started appearing. They haunted breakfast tables everywhere. Some children were found. Others never came home. And every morning, parents would pour milk into their cereal bowls, staring at the possibility that their own child could be next. But the Walshes weren't done. John became the host of America's Most Wanted, turning his grief into a weapon against predators. Week after week, he put fugitives on the screen, shining a spotlight so bright that evil had nowhere to hide. Over 1,000 criminals were caught because of it. Think about that. Adam was gone, but through his father's relentless pursuit of justice, thousands of families were spared the same pain. And yet every victory carried the shadow of one bitter truth. It should never have happened in the first place. Now I want you to lean in close for this next part, because it matters. The tragedy of Adam Walsh wasn't just about crime, it was about change. His story led to the creation of the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act of 2006, decades later, a law that built a national sex offender registry, that forced accountability, that said never again. But laws don't stop monsters. They only help us see them, and sometimes monsters still slip through. I can still see John standing at a podium, his voice cracking as he said, "Adam's legacy will save children." But every time he said it, you could tell there was a part of him that would trade all the laws, all the victories, all the television shows, just to hear Adam's laugh again. And maybe that's the cruelest truth of all. Justice can come. Change can come. But the hole left behind by one child's absence, it never closes. So as you listen right now, ask yourself, are you prepared to live in a world where predators hunt in plain sight? Are you ready to risk being silent again? Or will you let Adam's story burn into your soul as a warning, a demand to protect what you love most before it's too late? If you have children, lock this story into your heart. And if you don't subscribe after hearing this, then I have to ask, why ignore the story of a boy who could have been yours? Say it in the comments if you must, but don't leave silent. Silence is what evil counts on. Because in the end, Adam's voice may have been stolen, but ours still remains. The question is, will we use it? In the weeks and months after Adam's murder, the Walsh family lived in a haze of grief. But let me tell you, grief like that doesn't just linger quietly in the background. It transforms into something else: obsession, anger, a burning demand for answers. And when those answers never come, it hardens into resolve. I remember watching John Walsh transform before our eyes. One day he was a devastated father, hollow and broken, unable to even look at Adam's toys without breaking down. The next, he was on television speaking with a voice so raw and forceful it made the entire country stop. His message was clear: this will not happen to another child. But even as John's voice grew louder, the whispers of doubt and fear spread among parents everywhere. Playgrounds that once rang with laughter now carried an invisible tension. Mothers kept their children closer. Fathers locked doors twice at night. America's illusion of safety was gone, and that fear wasn't misplaced. Predators still roamed free. Children were still vanishing. Adam's case had become the spark, but the fire was still raging, and people began to ask, if Adam wasn't safe, is any child safe? If that question chills you the way it should, subscribe right now. Because turning away from these truths doesn't protect anyone, it only feeds the silence predators rely on. John Walsh refused to let silence win. He became relentless. His grief drove him to push for systems the country had never seen before. The missing children's movement grew out of Adam's loss. Parents, activists, lawmakers, they all began to realize that protecting children required more than just hope. It required reform. This is when the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was created. It was born out of despair, yes, but also out of determination. A hotline every parent could call, databases connecting police departments nationwide, resources that had never existed before. But here's the thing that will haunt you. Those reforms didn't come before Adam's death. They came after, always after. Isn't that the cruel truth about justice? That sometimes it only wakes up when blood is already spilled. I've stood in rooms where parents carried photographs of their lost children. I've seen mothers collapse when their child's name was read out at vigils. And every time John Walsh was there, his pain became their anchor. His fight gave them courage. But underneath all that, there was always the shadow of Adam, the boy who should have been there, but wasn't. When John took the stage for America's Most Wanted, the weight of that absence filled every episode. He wasn't just a host. He was a father hunting monsters. He turned his loss into a national weapon, and America watched as fugitives fell, one by one, because a father refused to forget. But let's be honest, every victory was bittersweet, because at the end of every case solved, every child returned, there was still one child missing forever: Adam. That's why the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act of 2006 wasn't just legislation. It was a monument. It built a national sex offender registry. It gave law enforcement tools to track and control predators. It said, "We remember Adam, and we refuse to let his death be in vain." But I need you to hear this and let it settle deep. Laws don't bring children back. They don't erase the nightmares or the empty chairs at dinner tables. They don't silence the question every grieving parent asks in the dark: why my child? And maybe that's where you come in, because Adam's story isn't finished. It lives on in every parent who teaches their child to stay close in a store, in every poster taped to a telephone pole, in every number dialed to the hotline. It lives on in you right now, listening to this. So I'll ask you again, will you stay silent, or will you carry this story, share it, and keep it alive so no one forgets what was stolen? If you can't subscribe after hearing this, then say why in the comments. Tell us, because silence is complicity, and complicity is how predators thrive. John Walsh once said, "Adam's legacy is saving children." But Adam never chose that legacy. It was forced on him. It was carved out of tragedy. And that's why the responsibility falls on us. Because if we turn away now, then Adam's laughter really is gone forever. Don't let it be. John Walsh once said, "Adam's legacy is saving children." But let's not twist that into comfort. It was never Adam's choice to be a symbol. His laughter, his life, his future were stolen, and what remained was turned into a crusade, into laws, into movements that carry his name. That is noble, yes, but it is also unbearably tragic. As you sit with this story, I want you to remember, behind every headline is a family broken forever. Behind every law is a child who never came home. Behind every system reform is blood spilled on the pavement of history. We only change after it's too late. And the cost of that delay is always a child's life. So now the question falls on you. Will you turn away? Will you shrug this off as just another video? Or will you do what John Walsh did? Take this pain and make it count for something. If you're still listening, you already feel the weight of this story. Don't carry it alone. Subscribe now so together we can keep Adam's voice alive through every story we tell. Because if you choose silence, remember this: silence is what let predators win in the first place. Go down to the comments. Tell us, how did this story hit you? Do you remember where you were when Adam's face appeared on TV? Did you grow up seeing missing children on milk cartons? Did it scare you the way it scared every parent at the time? Speak it. Share it. Because when stories like this are buried, that's when history repeats itself. And as the screen fades, I want you to imagine one thing: a boy, 6 years old, holding his mother's hand in a department store, asking for just one more minute to look at toys. A boy who never came home. That's Adam Walsh. And now he lives in your memory too. The question is, what will you do with it?